Chapter 5. About this chapter. In the previous chapters, Arjuna has learned about activity and unactivity, the yoga of action and the yoga of knowledge. He has just learned that true yoga is to seek higher union with God or a higher consciousness. This is yoga in action. This uniting with the higher consciousness, or Krishna in this case, requires one to avoid attachment to the fruits of action, which allows a universal wisdom to permeate all action. In this chapter, Krishna explains the nature of the perpetual sannyasi as one who neither likes nor dislikes experiences that are perceived by the senses and is even-minded in the awareness of all. Here, the union with a divine wisdom from a clear mind is suggested for a meditative space that allows wisdom to flow into a human mind and allows for action that has no desired outcome based on ego-driven desires. Right actions can lead to union with the higher consciousness, or the same union can be achieved through contemplation. The union can be reached by either path or both seen as one, as the motive for action comes from a clear connection to take right action, guided by a divine source and devoid of attachment to any outcome for praise, victory, or sense of gain, or conversely, to any sense of shame, guilt, or dejection from sense of loss. In this, Krishna is really sharing how man can be an instrument for God's work, as we may understand it. This is how one can become realized in the world of action. Arjuna learns that any seeker who is controlled in his body, mind, and intellect is suited for the highest meditative space from which to unite with God or higher consciousness. In this, a man is also acknowledging that this divinity is carried by all and begins to see this divinity in everyone and everything at all times. So he realizes his own higher self as the higher self in all beings. The reader is reminded in this chapter that in waking, the body and the senses, the mind and its emotions, and the intellect and its thoughts are all alert and active. In the sleep state, which is dreaming, the body is not actively participating, but the mind makes its creations of thoughts and images. In deep sleep, however, both the mind and body are not involved, thus the ego has ended, yet all functions are still happening in the body and mind without active participation from the person. The sage is ever conscious of the consciousness that is working through him or herself as he or she does nothing at all. This chapter goes into some detail of man uncovering the layers of ignorance from the body, mind, and intellect that have covered up or superimposed upon the knowing and experience of the perfect higher self. As such layers are uncovered and understood, the self passes through knowledge to emerge as the higher self, which is all-pervading, infinite, and perfect in all. The same self that is covered by ignorance and desire for agency and action results in the endless world of plurality rather than the world of all-encompassing unity and togetherness. The removal of ignorance is not a creative achievement, but rather an act of rediscovery of man's true nature and power. Arjuna is reminded that the ego thrives on the body, mind, and intellect's egocentric concepts. Thus, when ignorance ends, the ego ends as wisdom arises. Knowledge becomes self-evident when the ego has ended. There is no more clouding of perception as man realizes the truth that is ever existent. When a common man thinks about spiritual unity, the mental conception alone is seen as the ignorance, as it is so different from the concrete facts of objects and experience with which man generally perceives the world. We learn in this chapter that the impurities of vasanas that man carries from lifetime to lifetime or day to day can be shaken off to clear the way for knowledge and truth to be rediscovered. As is said in this commentary on this chapter, quote, these vasanas together can constitute what we philosophically call, quote, the ignorance of spiritual divinity, end of quote. The antidote for ignorance is knowledge. Thus, when with the rise of the knowledge of spiritual bliss, the dreary darkness of ignorance ends. The ego too comes to total extinction from which it cannot restart its career. End of quote. This is from the Holy Gita. It's the commentary by Swami Chinmayananda on page 373. Krishna reminds in this chapter that where the ego ends, samsara ends, and that he whose mind rests in evenness gains the divine tranquility of a realized God-man. This is because God, or the universe, or higher consciousness, is ever perfect and even-minded. When man works from this space, he becomes united with allows him the same as he lives in perfect equanimity in all that is all pervading and in all relationships, as the divine source and Krishna asserts that this allows all experience to happen in him, yet not to him. Man then remains the same in all conditions, regardless of the ever-changing experiences around and within himself. Even-minded and stable. Krishna reminds Arjuna that when one is centered in the higher self, he is not tossed about by continuously changing life experiences and circumstances that are a natural part of human existence. In this chapter, we are reminded that the classic teachings from Patanjali Yoga Sutras also explain this detail in a similar way, but teaches that the flow of thought can be moderated by breath work to help stabilize unsteady fluctuations in the mind. The intention of such breath work is also for the goal of a union with the divine or higher consciousness. In this chapter, Krishna shares with Arjuna the awareness of the duality inherent in all sense pleasures. That what brings joy through these means are limited and transient, and that union with the divine is ever blissful and serene. One way this is explained through various commentaries is the difference between the dream state and the waking state. No matter how wonderful or terrible a dream may be, waking up feels like a whole new experience that has much more control and where things are experienced more tangibly. Similarly, when a person is working from a space of union with higher consciousness, the blissful experience is ever present, which is quite different from a basic waking existence. Yet the preparation for such a union requires a focus that is pulled away from sense distractions to allow for detachment from the ego. This is not to say that sense enjoyments will not or cannot be enjoyed, but all will be in moderation to avoid falling into patterned human experiences that pull one away from thinking, speaking, and acting consciously from a space of equanimity. When one is acting in this world from such a space, limited sense enjoyments no longer hold the same fascination as the experience of something more satisfying, truly enchanting, and infinite. Two experiences are described at the end of this chapter that block people from experience, or the experience, of true union with the divine. These are desire and anger. Arjuna is taught that when there is a desire for anything, any inability to get to that desire, desires here include lust, passion, and greed, will create anger. Thus, freeing oneself from these two experiences allows for perfect happiness within the human form and allows for liberation or absolute freedom or moksha. This is the pinnacle of spiritual evolution for man. A seeker on such a journey withdraws from the world of objects outside of him to discover within himself a joy-filled field of entertainment and recreation, as within himself he is flooded with the light of pure consciousness and is lit up with a divine glow. This is the bliss of Brahman, higher consciousness, and in this space, man can enter at will this wonder of freedom and truth. In this chapter, we also learn what rishis or sages or saints have experienced and shared for centuries. This space allows for the absolving of sins through those who are self-controlled and intent on the welfare of all beings. Arjuna learns that this knowledge is gained about absolute truth and the union with the higher self that has always been present but hidden from true appreciation by man forgetting his divine truth. Truth is most often covered by forgetfulness or ignorance. One cannot and will not see any other being as less divine. With such an awareness, man engages in the good for all beings as he recognizes his own higher self in everyone. This is the hallmark of true liberation. For the healthcare guru. From this chapter, we learned about action and inaction, and about the perpetual sannyasi. Remember that a sannyasi is one who has raised his or her mind above the dualities in life and neither likes nor dislikes experiences from a consistently even mind, which does not get attached to actions, which is described as inaction. Krishna explained to Arjuna that the space beyond a normal waking space for man is incredibly beautiful and wondrous and can be experienced daily with the mind calmly controlled through the gaining of knowledge which can allow him to see this truth. For any person working with healthcare for themselves or for others, this seems like an unbelievable place. For how could we ever not enjoy the fruits of our own labors, as has been suggested in this chapter? This is Arjuna's dilemma too. By this point, Arjuna has already understood that his action to take needs to be taken, since it is the right action for the unjust ruling that is happening on his land, and he knows his work as a strong warrior. And now he's being told about how the awareness of a divine knowledge may be used to take action from a detached space, which does not focus on the result for the actual action to take. The intention to be even-minded in the outcome, regardless of the outcome, is the focus of this chapter. For most healthcare work, one knows the action that one is capable and knowledgeable to take and can perform regularly quite easily. Healthcare workers also have this interesting phenomenon occur in many cases where the outcome becomes more important than the reason for the action. The thoughts mentioned in this chapter apply to all. Remember that the idea of vasanas is the endless cycle of wants or desires or repetition that each person carries from lifetime to lifetime or day to day. Healthcare workers can look at their own experiences and see what seems to be such a cyclical, repetitive experience for themselves. Many are trying to get just a little more money, just a little more fame, and many a denial of either of these are often energies fueling their actions. When the desired success is achieved, the person often feels proud of the achievement through an acknowledgement of his or her own efforts. This chapter is to remind that a divine friend and higher consciousness is within each person as they live their lives. For any achievements in the earthly realm, there are finite results. So a financial success achieved today will run its course and will eventually run out as either expenses rise, new bills are created, economy changes, etc. If we look at our own life, we will notice the truth of this experience. Yet each person believes that this time it will be different. This, of course, is not limited to the healthcare worker, which is why it's useful to notice the same message being shared with Arjuna here. This is a universal truth. To consider that anything may be more wonderful than our intellectual understanding of how to achieve our desired results and then enjoy them seems almost impossible. Many may say that since the direction in this chapter is to avoid letting the mind take the praise for achievements nor the blame for loss, pushing away blame may be easier. Yet anyone with a conscience may find this equally difficult. Looking at Arjuna's case, we can see that if he loses his battle, many will blame him, and he will likely feel the same as he will see people he loves dying on either side. The success of winning also seems bleak, as he may feel similar guilt over the loss of lives, yet may be happy to see his land under his ruling again. The success of winning also seems bleak, as he may feel similar guilt over the loss of lives, yet may be happy to see his land under just ruling again. For healthcare, many are happy to help patients find comfort and or healing through visits. Some become prideful about their abilities in successful appointments or become irritated with some of the concerns they may hear about regularly that are not resolved. Remember that both types of experiences are each strongly linked with ego attachments. So while a healer sees good results in patients, he or she feels good about the action that they took for or with the patient, and when a patient is doing not well under their care, the healer will feel that they have not helped, and this often comes with plenty of blame from patients too. Sometimes the practitioner may blame the patient for not doing the recommended work from their own side, and this can bring up a frustration too. And any of these scenarios may have some truth to them, and each of these experiences are linked with the ego. Remember that the teaching in this chapter is reminding Arjuna that such is the ignorance that has clouded the knowledge of truth in man's mind. The ignorance that many healers or healthcare providers experience is this feeling that they are doing the healing. From this space, healthcare providers forget they are instruments for healing. In doing God's work, they can only provide the care that is flowing through them through the union with higher consciousness. This is what many practitioners forget. When their minds are also juggling financial gains or the I know perspective, many forget that the I often is a reflection of their own sense perceptions and mind's beliefs about their human forms. This is linked with ever-changing thoughts, which include opinions about themselves and their patients too. It leads to frustration, anger, blame, and shame all around. This does not allow a healthcare worker or healer to work from a space of union with the higher consciousness or divine friend. Only an individual can know his or her own truth in any healthcare experience. To understand one's own likely vasanas takes some time to reflect upon and to understand and undo through mindful vigilance. Many practitioners consciously, and many more unconsciously, compete with one another. Years after graduating from a program, they may compare themselves to their colleagues from their graduating class. Yet no person will know anyone else's intentions and sincere actions. And many do not know the reasons for their own. And why would anyone want to take the time to understand this better? As many know, when times are good, most people will continue to do what they have always done. This is why, once again, an awakening moment, such as what Arjuna is experiencing in this time, is the time that many have a potential window of opportunity to rethink their own thoughts, words, and actions in their healthcare services. Each healthcare practitioner goes through the experience of desiring some outcome for themselves or their patients and fearing poor outcomes too. This is a heavy burden to carry. Add to this that outside of the work being done in the healthcare setting, other desires and fears are perpetually dancing in each person's minds. From this chapter, we can learn that there is a way to take mindful actions toward just goals from a mind that can shake off the ignorance of the divinity within to allow right action to flow easily. Imagine a time where a mind is not shaken up with either excessive joy or heart-wrenching distress as one goes through their day. Is that even possible? After all, we are human, and this sounds quite unlikely. And then we can remember that our minds have become very identified with our body, mind, and intellect, and each experience we are having is shaped by this unconscious attaching to these experiences believed to be permanent and everlasting, while forgetting the higher consciousness that truly is. In this chapter, we are reminded by Krishna teaching this reminder to Arjuna and explaining there is a world as real as the waking world for the person that has an evenness in this worldly existence to notice the bliss that lies beneath it all. For most, just like Arjuna, this does not seem possible or real at all, as the mind will conjure up all sorts of questions and the intellect will look at this possibility from all angles to see or believe what it has always seen or believed. Yet this concept of not taking credit in times of gain or loss is a unique and different perspective. When we look upon our healthcare lives, do we see a pattern that has always been part of our life experience? Some may notice wanting to prove themselves, even from childhood. Others may fear not enough money. Some want to be noticed, and some work beyond even their own body's comfort levels in order to care for others. Many might say it's because they need the money, or they love the attention, or they may just feel good about themselves from the work they do. And who is the they that is referred to here? From a human perspective, we are reminded again in this chapter of the life of duality. So even the positive experiences a practitioner may experience will also have the opposite at some point. Working in union with a higher consciousness does not let a man or woman feel these human experiences from the space of agitation, restlessness, or worry. As one discovers within oneself this powerhouse of wisdom, the human life experience, in healthcare and outside of it too, becomes blissfully serene and stable. Remember that for such a divine union that helps one attain such peaceful bliss, Krishna has taught Arjuna that the renouncing of sense objects and desires is the key for opening up a unique connection with the higher consciousness. This does not mean sitting around isolated from the world of experience, but rather withdrawing to center oneself first. This chapter has mentioned how easily the mind is swayed in its thoughts, cares, likes, dislikes, preferences, and opinions. For clarity of the mind, avoiding getting tangled in such experience allows for an opening for clear yoga with the divine. And such a time does not mean that the rest of life will be the same. Without this intention, however, no space will be open in the mind or intellect to allow for new experiences to flood with wonder, what cannot occur with the flooding of normal thought patterns. Once such a union has been established, as Krishna said to Arjuna, a person can enter this space of peace and freedom at their own will. In this space, one's perspective changes from egocentric focus to a space of conscious acceptance of actions to take a firm equanimity towards all and a recognition of the higher self in all. Healthcare practitioners may feel as Arjuna did. How can I possibly do this? And of course, it is often not easy or downright horrendous or atrocious time in our own life that we suddenly come upon such teachings that direct our lives to experiences that we never dreamed of. Many times, such ideas or teachers are around us, and we are not ready to be receptive to the learning. For many, there does come a time when new thinking just makes a little more sense, and our minds are just a little more open to possibilities. In such times, we are stimulated by curiosity, wonder, and intrigue, and by such openness, and then energies draw us forward into the unknown. Now, If the space spoken about in this chapter is truly blissful and eternal, why wouldn't more people be rushing to be there? Who wouldn't want to be there? So likely the journey is not easy or fun, so then likely not possible for most of us to embark upon. Luckily, Krishna is not a forceful teacher, and no higher consciousness ever is. And Arjuna's natural questions, which reflect what any of us would think, are welcomed and answered in the next chapter and through the rest of this book too. The ever-steady friend is available to answer any and every question to help each person take right action regularly if there is a true desire to do so, and when a man or woman is ready to consciously pull away from their normally reflexive, egocentric tendencies. You too may have doubts about the ease of the direction suggested or taught in this chapter. Then the next chapter might answer some of your questions too. Read on.